You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm here with Anthony Iaffaldano, who's the VP of Marketing and Insights for Fandom. Fandom's a huge platform, bigger than most people realize. So to sort of kick things off, I'd love for you to sort of share, what is the elevator pitch for Fandom? What, who's showing up? How often are they showing up? Why are they showing up?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. First off, Kevin, it's great to see you again and talk to you. Fandom is a platform that helps 315 million fans a month go deeper on their favorite entertainment and video games and movies. And it's not just a platform for super fans, right? That's a thing that I think a lot of people that know Fandom think that, okay, they reach the really big devotees. We reach casual fans, we reach new fans. In fact, if you've ever turned to Google to answer a question about a show that you're watching or a game that you're playing, chances are you've been on Fandom. And that's because at the core of our platform, we have more than 250,000 wikis that cover every game, show, or movie that you can think of in exhaustive detail. Everywhere from the mega franchises like Star Wars to the quirky stuff that old guys like us watched, like Saved by the Bell, and the Golden Girls is a personal favorite for me. We have a crazy Golden Girls community. In total, across all of those communities, we have 30 million pages of content. And so we rank exceptionally well in Google. We answer over 1 billion questions a month about entertainment, everything from people asking about specific characters that they might see to specific episodes and plot points. And, that is really the core of what we are. But beyond that, we're more than just a wiki platform. We provide all kinds of touch points for people to connect with the stories they love. We do amazing content. We're the home of honest game trailers and honest trailers. We have an experiential division that does some amazing competitive gaming. And we also have D&D Beyond, which is the world's largest digital tool set for Dungeons and Dragons players. I played on paper when I was a kid, but we have millions of people now who log onto our system to create characters and kind of game virtually, which was obviously huge during the pandemic. And so that breadth and depth really give us a superpower. We're capturing billions of data points every month on what fans are interested in, what they're actively researching. And we call that data fan DNA. It's the core of a service that we're offering to advertising clients. But it's also something that we're starting to bring out to other departments within some of the clients that we work with. And it can help us go really deep on what's driving interest around a specific title, measure and compare engagement across multiple titles, or even get into these big macro level trends about how fans are feeling about entertainment. So lots of really amazing and interesting insights that we can pull out of that, and fun stories that we can tell there, I guess.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know you guys just finished sort of a study of sort of the state of Fandom. And we can talk more about the data in there, but I sort of think about Fandom as being one of those content categories that has to have gotten a tailwind from the pandemic because people were shut in, and that for the forms of entertainment which your wikis and which your content covers tends to be the kind of stuff that people really dove deeper into during the pandemic, either nostalgic stuff or new stuff. And so I'd love to hear, like, what are people watching these days, and what were some of the stuff in the study you expected, and what were some of the surprises that you found in the study?
Yes, I mean, this is the study that we released. The State of Fandom is a 3-year study. So we've got trended data year over year that shows how behaviors have changed. And it's so interesting to see, think about where we were in 2020. Lockdown just started. We didn't know what the heck to do with ourselves. And so we were binging anything and everything that we could get our hands on. That's when Tiger King exploded. That's when we saw people, trying a bunch of new genres that maybe they hadn't watched before. Documentaries were really big at that time overall. True crime and history. I think people were just looking for cathartic thrills to get them through the tough times. And in 20, there weren't a lot of new releases. There weren't those big zeitgeisty releases that really dominated conversation. Well, fast forward a year to 2021, Marvel's releasing something, it seems like every other weekend. We've got tentpole movies coming back, whether they're available online or not at launch. People have really snapped back into this idea of attention television and really diving in when something's big in the news. Everyone wants to experience it together, whether they're going to the theater or not. So we've seen things like Dune explode on our platform. Squid Game obviously was a huge spike for us because people just wanted more information on where it came from and what it was all about. So we really see things across genre really pop that you wouldn't have expected.
I would imagine that, you guys know what's coming down the pike, right, as well. So I'm sure you're in constant communications with studios, or maybe you just find out about stuff because of the rabid fan base makes sure you know about it as well. And so have you done any work with the data to see if you can essentially predict whether something's going to be a hit or not?
Yeah,
because I would imagine.
Point. So we have an algorithm that we built looking at performance indicators and the speed with which something is growing that can allow us to predict what's going to be hot, like what's going to be on the back page of Entertainment Weekly next month. We can tell you now.
Right.
My proudest moment since I joined Fandom, and this is going back a little bit, but I was able to beat my kids to Among Us by about 4 days. So I knew it was going to be big 4 days before they did. And then they came home talking about it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. And I didn't have to seem like the old out of touch guy.
Right.
But it's surprisingly accurate at letting you know, not necessarily what the box office is going to be, but how much a movie, a show, a game is really going to capture people's attention and interest and imagination, and where you're going to see the deepest engagement.
So you're launching the Cool Dad newsletter soon, right? So that we can all get the advance warning of what's hot.
It might only be one issue long, but I guarantee it'll be a hit.
So how are the fans spending their time and their money? What are they up to? What did you surface in the study?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Events are starting to come back haltingly, but they're starting. And so we've seen a lot of pent up demand, obviously, for people to go back to things like conventions, to go back to the movie theater. I think Spider-Man No Way Home just had, the fastest sellout in history, beating, Infinity War of like 3 years ago, right? They just keep topping themselves over and over again. But I think what's fascinating is we all looked at being on a Zoom call like this as like, all right, that's a short-term fix. And so entertainment is going to do some of this stuff in the short term just to get us through till we can get people back to the real money and get them in person. And what we found is that there were a lot of limiters that were stopping people from getting to events like a Comic-Con, not least of all the fact that it takes place in San Diego and not everyone can fly to San Diego, pay for a hotel, pay for food. Not everyone's lucky enough to have an expense account. And, you also see people who forget COVID, put COVID to the side. They don't like to be in big crowds. They don't like to deal with the hassle, but they're rabid fans and they're desperate to be at some of these events. And so I think it's starting to open people's eyes to the fact that virtual is not going to go away. It's just going to be a ride-along experience. And it provides an opportunity to really broaden some of those experiential aspects, bring people closer to the entertainment they care about and really pull them in. So it'll be interesting to see how people kind of balance the two and don't, bite off the head to try and, serve the tail, I guess.
Well, I mean, certainly, people are making trade-offs every day with regards to what they want to spend their time on, what they want to spend their money on. Are under the new normal, is there something that people are sacrificing in order to get their fix of entertainment? It's
funny. We asked them that, right? We said, how would you prioritize different expenses like travel and, not the crucial stuff. I really hope no one's trading off buying dinner to be able to, get that streaming service that they desperately wanted.
You haven't seen my kids' game. They would do that.
Next generation, I'm a little scared about. But it's interesting. They placed entertainment at the top of their list for the most part. And they said, this is the area where I want to take that discretionary budget and spend it, because for many of the folks that we surveyed, the entertainment that they watch, the games that they play are core to their identity, right? When they really love something, it is what they want to be thinking about when they're not, doing what they need to do to get by. It's really what kind of fills their bucket and fills their soul. And so people were very willing to spend more to have access to content, to have experiences, to collectibles and fashion to a lesser degree, but it's really more about how do I get myself closer to the community that love the same things that I do.
So are there any other aha moments from the study before we jump into my favorite, which is how to use all this data from a marketing and advertising perspective?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting is that we saw almost opposite reactions from entertainment and games in terms of how people change their behavior. With television and movies, it's what's everybody else watching so I can be part of the conversation and feel like part of the communal experience again. For gaming, people were really leaning into these old nostalgic titles. And I think it's the culmination of a trend we've seen for the last few years where people got stuck indoors. They didn't know what the heck to do. They bought a console, and many of them were lapsed gamers who hadn't played in a while, and they rediscovered a love for these titles and these franchises that they just hadn't been engaged with for a while. So if I look at the list of titles that really popped for us this year, it's all stuff that's been around since the late 90s, early 2000s. It's, Metroid for Nintendo, and it's Resident Evil, and it's, new releases of Minecraft. It's these titles that people have had in their heart for a while, and now they got to, really re-engage and re-experience them for the first time. We saw a lot of people talking about, I'm going back and replaying this game that I haven't played in 20 years, and I can't believe how amazing it is. So it's just interesting. Like, one side is let me be with everyone else, and the other side is very internal, where, it's all about deepening their own love and their own experience for a game that they haven't been in, a world that they haven't been in for a while.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, marketers are used to sort of using demographics or sometimes psychographics and sometimes personas when they're looking at, targeting levers that they might have available to them in a platform. But you guys have a lot of other targeting levers available. So, what are some interesting ways that the marketers and the advertisers, their agencies or in-house marketers, are sort of using the genre of the movie or the some other, type of game or one of the other categorical targeting levers to really reach the audiences that they want?
I mean, Kevin, you and I are old school search guys. So it's always been about context for me. I think context hasn't gotten its due in terms of the value that it has to really capture someone, because it's one thing to reach someone who's in your audience. It's another thing to reach them when they're engaged with something relevant to what you're talking to them about. And that's one thing that Fandom does really, really well because of the breadth that we have. If you're interested in targeting a certain fan base, we can not only get you in front of that fan base, but we see all of the connections between these groups. We can see the overlaps and see what they're most likely to be interested in at a categorical and genre level, from an actor perspective. Like, we can atomize those different programs and really use that to build targeting that's going to be very, very hyper-focused at reaching people based on the types of things that they're reacting to. For gaming, for instance, we've found that there's a huge overlap between people who play Fortnite style, like first-person shooter games, battle royale games, and people who play sports games. And the reason is the mechanics of those games. People like that competition, that cooperation that comes from those games. And so that all of a sudden opens up new venues for targeting that I think many marketers wouldn't originally think about, because there's not that on the surface connection between those two types of games. So it's super interesting once you start to crack the hood open and really dig deeper on all of these different relational pieces of information that can help you build a better context target. I think it can be really powerful.
That's great. I feel like with the, a lot of media either getting expensive, at least good media is staying expensive. So creativity, whether you're buying it at an auction or you're buying it on programmatic or IO, you sort of have to have great creative to sort of break through the clutter. And I feel like you guys are probably a big enough platform where some agencies or advertisers have said, let me do something unique, something specific to fandom that I'm not going to run, in my general run of network, or I'm not going to run in my general programmatic. Do you have any stories about where people have done something specifically unique, knowing that the ads are going to be running on Fandom?
Yeah, I mean, there are two that come to mind, and they're both more video units than they are traditional ad units, but I think they reflect the kinds of things that we do really well. I mentioned earlier that we're the home of Honest Trailers, which I don't know if you're a fan, if you've watched them, but they are basically retakes of what the trailer would say if the studio was actually being honest about what the movie is, right? And they're typically really snarky and they're funny. I was a fan long before I joined the company. And we've developed a product that sits on the back of those called Honest Ads. And they use the voice of the Honest Trailers, sometimes literally the epic voice guy, the guy who, very deep voice, who sounds like every trailer guy you've ever heard. And they run as a bumper for those Honest Trailers, which allows us to be really playful in the way that they frame up what you're about to see, like to just do more. Like there's such a targeted environment that we can have Loki mind controlling you in the preview for the Loki Honest trailer to go out and buy a car, or we can do such interesting things in that environment. We shot one video for State Farm where we had Jake from State Farm in the video before you got to the Honest Trailers, like basically helping you out. So it creates this universe where people are open to, I think, a little bit more playfulness and a little bit more fun that you couldn't buy anywhere else.
Right.
So that's one side of it, like being able to play with that voice and that persona that we have. On the other side, fandom's all about helping people dive deeper on the things they care about. And when a new trailer comes out for a show or a movie, all anyone wants to do is figure out who the hell these new characters are, how they all relate. And we have all of that information behind the wall. We just launched an interactive video offering that allows us to essentially drop these different interactive points into videos that, as you're watching, allow you to basically slow time down, pull up the wikis, read information, and fans have really responded to them. So the Dune trailer came out and we were able to kind of take people who weren't familiar with the story and get them really deep into lore without ever leaving the video, and then bring them right back to where they were. And that's worked really well. It's something that a lot more of our clients are starting to play with to, figure out how to deliver that fan service, like an experience that's not just an ad, but actually delivers value to the people that we're delivering it to. That's really what we're about, because everything that we do is for the love of the fans that we're working for.
Yeah, that really bridges into my next question, which is sort of the branded content and original content where marketing exists, or whether it's as light touch as a product placement, or if it's actually about the brand or about the product or service. I would imagine that, given ad blockers and millennials and younger, that a lot of agencies and marketers are very interested in that. And I'd love to hear how your sales teams are sort of embracing that and really sort of blurring the lines.
Yeah, I mean, look, those environments are great for, I'm not going to say bypassing ad blockers, but when the user receives that kind of native content, ideally it's for something that they're looking for. That's why they're clicking on it. That's why they're spending the time on the page. But ultimately, the things that you might want to do with a banner are not the same things that you're going to do with branded content. And so starting by understanding objectives and what's success look like for you. I mean, it's such a back to the basics conversation, but people forget sometimes. Our sellers can forget, our clients can forget. So we try to make sure that everybody goes back to that, because content can drive great engagement and fan love, but it's not going to drive clicks to your landing page. It's not going to drive conversions the same way something else would. And so we have lots of other opportunities, whether it's native ads, search ads, email, dedicated blasts, custom digital experiences. We did a really fun one when Star Trek's Picard came out that showed a full timeline going all the way back to the earliest Star Trek content that we've seen that show all of the beats in his life and how he became who he was. And And that ran in a banner that then expanded into a page, but it was all about, getting people deeper to the lore. So knowing that that's what they wanted people to kind of dig deep. We were able to build something that did that for them that they were thrilled with.
So clearly you've got the studios and the distribution platforms and channels or broadcasters, whatever you want to call it. They're obviously heavy advertisers because they're promoting their shows. But I'd love to hear about some industry categories that are surprisingly active on Fandom that might not be obvious, right? That you might say, oh, wow, they're advertising there. Like, I didn't think that would be a good place for them, but it's great to see them there.
Yeah. So one of our biggest advertisers over the last 2 years has been the FDA, of all people, and a truth campaign. Primarily because of the demographics of our audience, we tend to skew a little bit old, or a little bit younger, rather. Excuse me. And they're trying to convince younger consumers not to try vaping. They're trying to get to them from a lifestyle perspective. And so it was a really great fit for them from that standpoint. Like, we know they're coming to the site, to get information about stuff where their guard is maybe down a little bit and where they're more in casual time. Being in fan mode is a big point for us. Like, you're reaching people when they're looking for that connection. So that's certainly been a big category for us, a big client for us, and an area where I think we can do a lot. A lot of the other categories that we're strong in, I mean, it's the categories that you would expect in an entertainment lifestyle. So fast casual food, restaurants, travel, folks that are really trying to reach people in that entertainment mindset, licensing, toys, peripherals for the gaming categories. But I'd say FDA is probably, if I think through the list, that's one of the folks where it's just like, wait a minute, what are they doing with you? But, I'm sure I'm forgetting someone else who might be a pretty surprising one too.
That's definitely a fun one that I would not have thought. And I guess I would have had to surf around Fandom for a while before I ran into a truth ad.
Yeah, maybe not in the target.
Exactly. I've already made my mistakes if there are any that I made. So one of the things that comes up sometimes when you're talking to a branding client or you're talking about maybe creating some branded content for a marketer is, there's production costs associated with that. And so they sometimes get concerned, like, the half-life of this is going to be pretty short, right? The movie's going to come out and then it's going to be gone, or the show's going to launch and then it's going to be gone. Have there been any good examples where people have gotten extra mileage out of their branded content, like lengthened that half-life to justify the production cost?
Yeah, I'd say there are fewer clients that take that long view, unfortunately, because many of them are very focused on the moment, the window, like, how do I maximize this second? But as we know from our data, there's really a long tail of demand on entertainment releases. You've got the mass audience, the early adopters who go in when something comes out. Sentiment will trickle down and you get a second burst of people who are like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. But then you've got the curious, or the people that for whatever reason weren't in the audience when something first came out, and they will go back over time and you'll see spikes in demand. And so, making sure that the content that we put out is not something that's in the moment, but truly answers fan questions or helps you. Like, a lot of what we do in the gaming category, for instance, are tips and tricks to help you pass particularly hard levels or to level characters up at certain times. Those are things that are going to be evergreen, right? Making sure that they're discoverable, that they're distributed, and that they serve a purpose. Those are all green fields for making sure that those assets are going to be paying dividends for a while. And you had mentioned ad blocking before. One of the things that we do offer to clients is the ability to work with the administrators who build the wikis. And so when you have a content release or you have something coming out, run an ad and it'll run for a week. Teach an admin what's coming and it'll run for years, right? Tortured analogy, but I think you get where I'm going with that. That is the long tail of how you make sure that the right message about the IP that you're building gets out there and gets into fans' hands exactly when they need it.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I wonder if my behavior is typical. Sometimes with certain shows, I'll wait till the last season is about to start, and then I'll start binging it from the beginning. I did that with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
You know, while everyone else is sort of commenting on it, and they get stuck in these dead zones between the seasons, right? I would prefer to just wait until it's about to be over, and then I'll start from the beginning. Have you seen any evidence of that behavior from a group of folks?
Oh, absolutely. I think you'll see that. You'll see folks who are kind of late to the party and wait until they can just watch it all at once so they don't have to have that weekly slog. But I've also seen that you'll get fans and accumulate them over time. And those fans will go back before the last season and rewatch everything. Like the most dedicated fans, they want to make sure everything's fresh before they get to that final season so they can catch all of the tie-offs and all the things that are happening. That sort of like binge through behavior is such a big thing. We actually launched a video series called Cram It. So giving people a recap, but it's not a lightweight 30-second YouTube video. Like, here's what you missed. It's often a 15, 20, 30-minute video that hits all of the high points to prep you for the new season, the next edition, whatever the case might be. And those tend to do really well with fans as they're prepping for that last season. Like, they just want to know, help me do this without committing 20 hours of my life, 30 hours of my life. Like 20 minutes I can do when you make that comparison, right? Absolutely.
I've noticed something interesting, and maybe I don't have hard data on it, but I've noticed that used to be that in video games there'd be Easter eggs, right? But now I'm seeing Easter eggs show up in movies more often, cameos and Easter eggs, right? Those are sort of the two things that seem to be happening more frequently. And I'm wondering if those are the kinds of things that sort of go viral or have sort of a particularly strong impact within the wikis.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of an older example, but they're on the show Psych from USA from a couple of years back.
I remember. I like that show. That was a great
show, right? Dule Hill is amazing, but they had this running gag where they'd have pineapples in the background of different scenes, and fans picked up on it quickly and started documenting every single scene that they found the pineapple in so that other fans could go back and find them. That kind of stuff is stuff that we lean into really, really hard, and that fans tend to love because it's done for them. You don't put a pineapple in the background of every single episode, or like, I'm a huge Community fan. They had entire scenes play out in the backgrounds of certain episodes that would pay off things that were said weeks and months earlier. That's only for the fan that's really leaning in and paying attention. And so those fan communities, because all of our content is user generated, they're going to document the stuff that's clearly done for them and that makes them feel like they're part of this like inside club. So yeah, it's certainly a big behavior across the site for us. If it's official canon, but it's quirky and weird and people might not catch it the first time around, it'll be on Fandom, no doubt.
I wonder if you may not have this stuff at your fingertips, or maybe you do, since you really seem to be into it yourself. But I sort of think of some of the most evergreen shows actually sort of jump into the zeitgeist and become part of the regular vernacular, right? And Seinfeld and Friends are two of them that I can think of off the top of my head. But is that, which are the ones that are sort of having that really long evergreen long tail, where it's actually fairly sustained long tail engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that they're fringe, but you will never see a month where Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel aren't at the top of our categories and just driving immense numbers. But you mentioned Friends. Friends is really huge for us. We also see a ton of traffic around The Office. It tends to be, at least from a show or a movie perspective, the more canon entertainment there is, the more content there is, and the more world building they've done, the bigger it ends up being on Fandom. So even things that you wouldn't expect to be as documented, like Survivor, for instance, rabid fan base on Fandom, where they're looking at all of the different, clips of all of the different contestants and comparing them across seasons. That is not one that I would have thought would have done really well on our platform, but you can't, it's constantly high for us, which was a surprising one.
Any fun stories about either from the the sort of traditionally produced shows to the reality shows where the the stars start becoming involved in the wikis themselves and sort of, are right there next to the fans interacting?
That's a great question. I mean, we've certainly had a number of folks mention Fandom and that they use Fandom during the creative process. Different folks have talked about it's at one point, actually, Wikipedia, which is the Star Wars site that we had. There were creatives at Lucasfilm who said that they go to Wikipedia as the resource as they're building, like, wait a minute, we're just the fan knockoff site. We're not the official, and you need us. Right. So I think that was some great validation to those people who for over 10 years have been building out all this really, really dense information on the universe to know that, that their work's being used like that. In terms of specific actors and talent editing the wikis, I'm sure they're there. I mean, we have them all through registration, but I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. But I do think it's interesting, like the people who do this work, they're unpaid volunteers and they take it incredibly seriously. The person who administrates Memory Alpha, which is our biggest Star Trek wiki, doesn't think of himself as a wiki admin or, a fan. He refers to himself as a Star Trek historian. And that's how serious they take the work that they're doing to document these worlds for other people who love them as much as they do.
Right. So any tips for marketers who, as a result of hearing our conversation are saying, hey, I should come up with something cool to do on Fandom? Like any tips other than calling your sales team, which of course they can do.
They can always call our sales team. They can call me. I'll refer them to our sales team. I think number one, be open to the unusual. I think the benefit that our data gives us is that we know so much about what drives fan interest. And I think to your point about being smart about marketing and finding targets that are going to work more efficiently for you, often there can be some surprising places that we can help you carve out that will really connect you with the type of fan you're looking for, so flexibility with that idea of audience targeting and who your target is, I think is a first great one. I think, the second thing is we're a great place if you're looking to build authentic connection with fans, with people who are either in love with a property or starting to be in love with that property. And so, figuring out the way that you can bring value to that equation. We've seen this in a number of different surveys that we've done with our fans. They desperately want, it's a weird scenario. Usually people want to block out brands as much as they can. They don't want them to be part of the experience.
Right.
Our fans tell us, no, we get that brands are a part of this experience. We also get how tenuous the entertainment business is and how we might never get another glimpse into that universe that we love if an exec in a boardroom somewhere says no. And so they're more than happy to have brands join in if they can help them spend a little bit more time. So if you come to the table feeling like you can add to the experience and seeing a way that you could potentially help deepen that fan experience, it's going to be responded to very positively. You're going to see engagement. You're going to see the kind of response that you're looking for.
That's great. Is there any general breakdown as to whether marketers and advertisers come in with sort of branding KPIs or direct response KPIs when they start to think about advertising on Fandom?
I mean, we see, because of our scale, we see both sides of the coin. I would say we probably lean a little bit heavier to the branding side of the mix. But, for certain categories, if it's something that you consume while you're playing and gaming, we can certainly drive conversions in those cases. And a lot of our usage, 60 to 70%, is companion usage. You're watching the show right now, you're playing the game, and you whip your phone out of your pocket, do a search, and end up on Fandom, right? So knowing that context, no one's buying a car when they're trying to get through to the next level of their game. But they could be convinced to order takeout. They could be convinced to buy a piece of merch. Like, there are many categories that I think work really, really well in that environment. We can help kind of, point people in the right direction from that standpoint.
Well, those are all great insights. I appreciate you sharing them with me and with the EMA audience. And I look forward to watching the platform continue to evolve.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.